Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the Bully of Skidmore, Part 8. This is the story of Ken Rex McElroy. Now, when we last left off, we had talked about after the court hearing of Trina McLeod and how McElroy would eventually marry Trina at 15 when he was 42. And after marrying her, he would walk away from that case. And his various other incidences with Farmer Romaine Henry and newly officer Dean Stratton, which would both learn that you just did not cross Ken McElroy. And we had also discussed briefly about how in the period of time that he had lived, he had had over 21 different trials of felony charges for various things, and he would always have it to where he just walked away either because people would change their story, drop the case, or they just went missing. And McElroy and Trina would move into a home in Skidmore where they would reside for many years, and things just kind of went in that kind of system. And it was getting to a point that his family, his children had gotten older and would be caught, like if anyone went into town, they would just take like this caravan of trucks and they would just kind of run through town and just do their daily thing. And on this particular day is when everything kind of transpired. Around 1980, Ernest Bo Bowmankamp and his wife Lois Bowmankamp, who were original residents of Skidmore but would move away, and then shortly afterwards, after a few years, would actually return back to Skidmore. And around the time that everything goes down, that Bowmankamp and Lois would actually return to Skidmore and open up kind of like this small little country store as a way of running business. And it was actually known as the grocery store around town. And on April 25th, 1980, one of McElroy's daughters, Debbie McElroy, would actually be driving around with Trina. And they would go to the store, and Debbie would actually take Trina's youngest daughter, Alita McElroy, into the store with her to do some grocery shopping. I might also want to add that Alita was about 4 years old at this time. While they were shopping around, one of the co-workers of the grocery store, Evelyn Sumi, was watching Debbie and Alita as they were picking out their items that they wanted to purchase. And she had noticed that Debbie McElroy was going around the grocery area and picking out certain items for groceries, and had noticed that Alita McElroy had grabbed a couple pieces of candy while they were shopping. So when Debbie would go to pay for the items, Evelyn Sumi would ask Debbie about the pieces of candy that Alita had gotten. Debbie would also say that Alita had money for her and that she would pay for it herself. But at this point, Alita did not want to pay, so Debbie McElroy would take the piece of candy away from Alita and put it back. At this point, Alita McElroy would start throwing a tantrum, to where after she had put the candy up, Alita would run behind Debbie McElroy and grab another piece of candy. And once again, as they were going to pay for everything, Evelyn Sumi would also remind Debbie McElroy that Alita had picked up another piece of candy, to where Debbie would say, "No, I'm not buying this," and she would take the piece of candy and put it back, and at this point would be dragging Alita out of the store, kicking and screaming. Lois Bowmankamp would actually notice this going on, so she would actually walk up to Evelyn Sumi and ask her what was going on. At this point, Evelyn Sumi was trying to explain the situation, and at this point, McElroy's oldest daughter, Tammy McElroy, came in storming, yelling, and cussing at the two ladies. And when the ladies, being completely stunned, had no idea what was going on, asked Tammy what seems to be the problem. And this is at the point in time that Tammy was explaining to the ladies that how dare they sit there and accuse her 4-year-old sister of stealing or shoplifting from their store. Lois and Evelyn tried to explain things to Tammy McElroy, but she wasn't hearing any of it. And they were trying to explain, no, we never accused her of shoplifting. We never said anything like that. We had noticed that she had picked up a piece of candy and she needed to pay for it. But Tammy wasn't hearing anything they had to say and began cussing and screaming at them more. And before walking out, she would look at Evelyn and Lois and tell them, my family will never purchase anything from this store ever again, and stormed out. After they had stormed out, Lois and Evelyn just went back to working as they normally would, but about 20 minutes later, they saw this very large silhouette outside the door, and in walks Ken Rex McElroy. And right beside him is a very angry Trina McElroy as well. She walks up, she begins yelling and screaming at the ladies, talking about how they accused her daughter of shoplifting. And this kind of went back and forth for a while, to eventually Ken Rex McElroy would sit there and look at Trina and tell her to be quiet. And she would immediately be quiet. And at this point, he would look at Lois and he would take a pocket knife out and hold it about chest level and would just look at her. He wouldn't say anything, just keep this very, very intimidating stare. Bo Bowman-Camp would actually notice this, and he would walk up and he would ask McElroy to actually put the knife away, to which McElroy would just look at Bo and tell him, no, you can't tell me what to do. It was at this point that McElroy would go and ask that Lois would sell him a pack of cigarettes. And Lois, being the very headstrong person that she was, refused to sell him cigarettes. And she would tell Ken McElroy that it is under my belief that no one in your family wishes to do business with us, so therefore I'm not going to sell you a pack of cigarettes. And it is said by other people that McElroy would look at Lois and ask her, is that right? People would say in different areas that some people believe that Lois should have sold the cigarettes, and some people believe that Lois was in the right. She had every right to sit there and deny the sale. But essentially, this incident with the piece of candy and the incident with the cigarettes is actually what kickstarted this feud between the McElroys and the Bowman-Camps. Many residents of Skidmore would actually not only talk to Bo Bowman-Camp about the incident, but also Ken Rex McElroy. And they both had two different sides of the story. If you would ask Bo, he would tell the story about the misunderstanding and everything. But if you talk to Ken, he would more or less tell you that they treated him horribly. They acted like they were better than him and would refer to him and his family as those damn thieving McElroys. And so this is kind of where this kind of feud would start. And it is at this point that not only Ken was stalking Bo and Lois on a regular basis, but his family was as well. He would regularly drive by Bo and Lois's home every single night and sit in his truck and just watch them. And if they so much as peeped over at their window, that's when he would actually brandish a gun, show it to them, shoot it in the air, and then drive off. And then come back minutes later or hours later and do the exact same thing. And if Ken wasn't doing this, he would have Trina and his daughters get into different trucks and drive through the residence doing the same exact thing. And this was actually on a nightly basis. Bo and Lois would actually go and actually call the police, but the police would completely dismiss it. And they would say, oh, that's just Ken Rex McElroy. He's just a town bully. Don't show him any attention and he'll just leave you alone. And it got to the point that now Bo and Lois just felt like they didn't know what to do. And they were completely petrified. It is said that shortly after this, that Lois would take and buy herself a 12-gauge shotgun that she would keep underneath her bed and would just say, you know, if the police aren't going to do anything, we need to at least protect ourselves. But this was only the beginning of the feud between Lois and Bo Bowmankamp and Ken Rex McElroy.